Let not your heart be troubled. You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast. Hey, you know how I love hearing great American success stories and sharing them all with you. Well, our favorite T-shirt, underwear, sock company, Tommy John, well, that's one of them. Now, Tom Patterson grew up in a small town in South Dakota. After college, he had a successful career. He was selling medical devices on the West Coast. But he quickly became fed up with the way his undershirt kept coming untucked. So despite having zero background in men's fashion whatsoever, Tom sketched up some designs for smarter undergarments. Now, starting out of his apartment and growing Tommy John to the globally recognized company it is today, well, Tom did the American dream. Now, of course, they're super soft. They're undershirts. Guess what? They never come untucked. Plus, all of Tommy John underwear is backed by the best pair you'll ever wear, guarantee, or it's free. Go to TommyJohn.com/Hannity for 20% off your first order. TommyJohn.com/Hannity. You get 20% off your first order. TommyJohn.com/Hannity. 20% off. That's TommyJohn.com/Hannity. Yeah, I'm here. Happy Friday. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of this extravaganza. You know, some fascinating things are now happening that I want to bring your attention to. No, we have to talk about the House passing the bill. I know we get distracted. We're all caught up in a million other different things all the time. But this is too important in terms of what the election was really all about and what the election means today and what it means for the forgotten men and women of this country. And while it's not my perfect bill, it certainly is one that I like enough that I'm going to support for the people of this country because it does the right thing on corporate taxes being cut, does the right thing on middle classes being cut. It does the right thing on a lot of different things. Repatriation, energy independence. These are all, things that if we want to get Americans back to work, we have to get back to work. Now, we have Larry Kudlow and Steve Moore coming up in the course of the program today. I am telling you the floodgates of the Fusion GPS dossier and the floodgates of Uranium One are about to gush wide open. Now, I'm glad you all are laughing in there. Pastor Scott, you're not interested in the show at all? You just, my friend Pastor Darrell Scott is in from Cleveland, and he brings 400 people with him. I guess what, you need protection in New York? He's hiding out. He's got a scarf and a hat on. Nobody's going to recognize you. You're all right. This is my hometown. You're safe. When I go to his church, he meets me with, 5 armed bodyguards thinking, uh-oh, Hannity's going to get killed. I love you to death. I'm going to bring you in if you can come on in the next half hour. We have a lot of fallout from this whole Franken issue and information that you're not going to get anywhere. Now, I did a whole breakdown of how the left protected the Clintons for 30 years, nearly 30 years of their lives, and how all of these women that came forward, bimbo eruptions as they referred to them, how all of that happened, and all of the things that were said, and all of the defenses that were made at the time. And when you see the hypocrisy, it is breathtaking of so many people because they never believed a single person that made an allegation against Bill Clinton, because at the end of the day, Bill Clinton supported their political agenda, and politics trumped what should have really mattered back in the day. And I've got to give some people credit. I mean, I told you the exchange yesterday that took place between Juanita Broaddrick and Chelsea Handler. I don't know Chelsea Handler, and she apologized to Juanita Broaddrick, and Juanita accepted her apology. And I tweeted out, you know what, lesson to be learned here for everybody. The lesson of asking for forgiveness and the lesson of being given forgiveness. But there's a whole lot of people that have a lot of accounting to do if we really want to take a long, hard, serious look at the issues that are facing us today. And then you got Senator Grope over there, Al Franken, the groper senator from Minnesota. The people of Minnesota are ultimately going to decide. And but there are things about Al Franken that most people never knew. Most that we last night, we went through and we explained that there's a pattern of behavior of Al Franken. It's a history of vile and repulsive behavior by him. and information that nobody in the media is ever going to talk about or ever going to tell you about. But I will. Now, Franken did issue an apology, but as Leanne Tweeden said in our interview yesterday, well, why didn't he apologize if he meant it when he saw her with her husband at some event they were all at together? Anyway, so they're talking about a Senate ethics investigation with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and others, Chuck Schumer, Claire McCaskill, now supporting because, I would argue in many ways, well, all right, well, we're going to have a full investigation first. Okay, which is fine. But the problem here and the difference here is we've got pictures. We got a woman asleep and he's groping her and he thinks it's funny, supposedly. And now he thinks it's not like he didn't deny it. Now, some people, if these accusations come up and they say no. Okay, now that's when you need an investigation. I keep saying at the end of the day, I want the people of Alabama to know the truth. This transcends politics for me. I don't want anybody who potentially ever was a predator to a 14-year-old girl in the United States Senate. That should be apolitical for everybody. And I think the people of Alabama deserve to know the truth, whatever that is, because I don't know 100% myself on any of this right now. They deserve to know before they go to the ballot box. And for saying that, apparently that's a bad thing. But it has served me well in my career not to rush to judgment. Richard Jewell is a case in point. In the case of hands up, don't shoot, Darren Wilson. No, that never happened. And the reason the grand jury never pressed charges against the officer is because so many eyewitnesses, most of them African American, said that it was Michael Brown who reached into the car to fight the policeman for his gun. It was Michael Brown who ran at the police officer, and Darren Wilson had no choice. So you know what? Sometimes when you don't rush to judgment, facts begin to, unravel and you begin to see truth. Actually, truth should matter to everybody. Or in the case of the Duke lacrosse case, I actually went to the families directly. I sat down with them as I was covering the case so I could understand everybody's point of view. And it turned out those 3 kids had never raped anybody. And they put together over time evidence that exonerated them, exculpatory evidence in that particular case. And it turned out that the woman in that case was lying. And yet 88 professors, they rushed to judgment. And they bought an advertisement in the school newspaper. When you're talking about very, very, very serious charges against somebody, and one person says yes and the other person says no, you have got, one of the things that Roy Moore in the lawyer's press conference did the other day, if they think that's a forgery, what we have is I had a handwriting expert on this program that day of that press conference. Guess what? If that ink is new, they'll be able to tell. And as the handwriting expert said, 42 years experience, that they will be able to tell if they can get copies of writings of the judge at that time in his life with that yearbook, then it will be proof positive. Science will now play a part in determining and ascertaining the truth, which the people of Alabama deserve. That's what they need. Anyway, so we went through last night. We talked to Melanie Morgan and Leanne Tweeden. We always invite all sides on. I invited those that talked and spoke out against Judge Roy Moore. Now, so you have different circumstances in each time, and you got to look at it. By the way, Washington Post columnist Franken shouldn't resign because he's a liberal Democrat. Wow. Washington Post published a column today. Feminist Kate Harding, the column criticizes Al Franken over these pictures, et cetera, of Leanne Tweeden. And Harding's take can fairly be summed up as, sure, Franken's a pig, but he votes to keep abortion legal, so he shouldn't resign. I'm reading from comments Larry O'Connor made on Mediaite. Harding is described in her byline as the co-editor of Nasty Women, Feminism, Resistance, and Revolution in Trump's America. Apparently a co-host of some podcast called Feministy. Is that what is that? Author Feminasty, I guess. I don't know. Asking for it. The alarming rise of rape culture, what we can do about it. But anyway, she begins by excoriating Franken in no uncertain terms and talked about that I could reasonably be expected to lead the calls for him to step down following allegations that he forced his tongue down a woman's throat, accompanied with a photo of him grinning as he moves to grope her breasts while she's sleeping. It's disgusting. He treated sleeping women as a comedy prop. She then goes on to explain how much better the Democratic Party is in its politics and agenda for issues that she, as a feminist, believe in. Really? Here's my question to her. Really? What about the Clintons for the last 30 years? Really? What about, do you believe Juanita? Do you believe Kathleen Willey? Do you believe Paula Jones? Never thought I'd see in the New York Times, I believe Juanita. And anyway, she finally explains that the suitable penance and punishment for Franken he should undergo, including an ethics investigation, a promise that he will not run again, a listening tour so he can hear from women, and he must vow to fight for in the remaining years of his office. By the way, I never heard her criticize the money that Clinton takes from countries that abuse women, where men tell them how to dress, where marital rape is not illegal, where spousal abuse is not illegal, domestic violence, where gays and lesbians are killed being who they are, and where Christians and Jews are persecuted. Tens and tens of millions of dollars, and they bought Hillary's silence. But, you know, one of the things that really disgusted me that nobody talked about, you know, I haven't heard from Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi yet on the Al Franken issue. And when it comes to him, you probably haven't heard these things, but he has a long history of making all kinds of vicious, vile, out-of-line comments. He's also a hypocrite when it comes to sexual harassment. In 1995, on Saturday Night Live, his, quote, skit, his humor is pretty disgustingly twisted and sick. He suggested drugging and raping Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes. He said at the time, I give the pills to Leslie Stahl. When Leslie passed out, I take her to the closet and rape her. And that's why you never see Leslie until February. When she passes out, I put her in various positions and take pictures of her. How eerie is that in light of what he did to Leanne Tweeden? He also wrote a piece in Playboy magazine, Pornorama. He said, well, and by the way, we can't even read it because it's too vulgar, but one part in particular says, well, I'm talking about the Internet, which is a terrific learning tool. For example, a couple of years ago when he was 12, my son used the Internet for a sixth grade report on bestiality. Then he goes on in the article to fantasize about a machine that would perform oral sex on him. And then in 2008, when Franken was running for the Senate, he was forced to apologize for what he wrote in Playboy and his comments about Leslie Stahl. Then he writes in his new book, he writes, well, to say I'm sorry for writing a joke was to sell out my career, to sell out who I've been my entire life, and I wasn't sorry. I've written Pornorama or pitched that stupid Leslie Stahl joke at 2 a.m. I was doing my job. Well, based on his own words, we can only conclude here that any apology from Senator Grope is meaningless. Anyway, 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. We have more on this as well. Also, my friend Pastor Scott is here with us today. A nice surprise on a Friday. We'll get to him. And we have Peter Schweitzer coming in today. We also will look at this bill passed in the House yesterday and what's going to happen in the Senate. Larry Kudlow, Steve Moore stopped by. All right, as we roll along, I'm just going to go through a quick history at the bottom of the half hour of how the left for 30 years were complicit. Because, and that sort of goes into and fits into what I was just telling you as it relates to these issues. If you had the right politics, it didn't matter what you did. You can smear, slander anybody you want. And that's what the Clinton team did for all of those years. And they did it again in 2016. And by the way, the censorship of conservative groups, TikTok, they have a history that is equally bad, which, by the way, we do our work and we will expose, and it'll be common knowledge by the time everything is finished. So on top of this, so you got Franken now, an image, a picture, no ambiguity, and he admits it, of him groping, Senator Groper. And, you know, literally the story of what Leanne Tweeden said yesterday, harassing a woman, kissing her against her will, and all of these things. Now, he's a hypocrite because when he speaks out about sexual abuse, and, you know, of course, he was one of the ones that went after Donald Trump, and he, you know, of course, he's not even in touch with his own misconduct here. But at the end of the day, what this is about, Leanne Tweeden was asleep here. Now, you have to ask yourself, given this information, all you know as a fact in this case, and everyone raising the questions these days about who's fit for office, who's not fit for office, etc., this is a case that is resolved. There's no ambiguity here. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the people in his state of Minnesota that are going to decide, I guess, because I don't see anybody in the Senate. You know, it's funny. Allegations result in immediate. You don't meet the qualifications to be a senator. When you have a case of proof, well, now we're just going to have an investigation. We already know the outcome of the investigation. We have the picture. The outcome is known here. He didn't deny it. Anyway, so what's really shocking is that his comments alone, I don't know how I don't see anything funny about rape and making a joke about rape and what he said about Leslie Stahl. Now, here's where the media does some of their best work defending Democrats. I don't know of many others that told you the things that I have just told you. When we come back, I'll lay out a history of how the media defended the Clintons, and we got a special in-studio guest today. Pastor Darrell Scott is with us. You're going to come in, right? He's next. 25 till the top of the hour. Pastor Scott in just a second here. You know, I just want to remind everybody of this. As we now talk about these very serious, important issues when these charges come up now on almost a daily basis, you cannot forget here, as we examine the systemic, deplorable defense that has gone on 30 years of the most troubling, predatory conduct of Bill Clinton and sexual abuse allegations. It is now 30 years and up to and including last year. The destroyed Trump media, now that it doesn't matter because Hillary lost, now they'll begin, a few of them that have a conscience and a soul that knew that they were lying. You know, oh yeah, now we can look at Bill Clinton's record. Now he's, I believe, Juanita. I don't know whether to say better late than never, or is it just politically expedient, because now that sort of gives you, you know, now we can just go after every Republican and it's okay now because now we really mean it. You know, you have people in the media that did everything. They colluded with Hillary Clinton's campaign. Never asked those questions. Nobody over at MSNBC, and I give Chris Hayes a lot of credit. I don't know him, but he actually said, you know, the real day of reckoning is now coming with them. Well, why wasn't that last year during a heated campaign? Because they wanted Hillary to win more is the answer. And that's the sad part, not him in particular, but people. And so some are now coming to terms with what they said and how they covered it all up and what they did and how they used every effort to protect Bill Clinton and how there was a systemic smear campaign against any woman that said anything against him and discredit, you know, all of his accusers. What they said and did is beyond despicable. By the way, Jennifer Flowers was the first, and then in the Monica Lewinsky years, it turns out Bill Clinton admitted he did have an affair with Jennifer Flowers. Jennifer Flowers, what did they say at the time? Oh, she's a liar. Oh, those tapes were doctored. On and on and on, even though you can hear them talking and distinguish his voice. She went into some detail how she had a 12-year affair with him. All right, that's affair, that's consensual, but it's still his behavior. And then when he lied about it, he hurt her in that sense. And Hillary Clinton goes on 60 Minutes, and she defended him. And then the same Paula Jones, this was a case of exposing himself. Drag $100 through a trailer park, as James Carville once said. You never know what people are going to say. You know, it's all of this now is in the public record. And Paula Jones saying what she said. Kathleen Willey saying she was attacked in the Oval Office, groped and fondled and touched and kissed and grabbed by Bill Clinton. Then Juanita Broderick's story. You know, all of these women individually were smeared, slandered. They weren't believed. Hillary never believed one of them. But now last year during the campaign, every woman has a right to be believed. But look at their history here. You know what it is? I'm going to tell you something. Me pointing this out, a lot of people just don't have the courage to say all of this. They just don't. Because you're taking on the powerful forces of the left, that it doesn't matter how deep their hypocrisy goes. Doesn't matter how grotesque their defense of all of this was. It means nothing. You know, Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, Juanita Broderick. I took the time to interview all of these women. Just like I am saying in every case, you have got to look for facts and truth and information and then make your determination, which now the people of Alabama, they're going through that process down in Alabama. And I have confidence in the people of Alabama. They're going to figure it out, sort it out between now and this election in December. There will be many things that come out between now and then that they can decide. Maybe the scientific side of this, the forensic side of this, is going to play a big part of it as it relates to the yearbook, and if the ink is new or if the ink is from the 70s, or if it's his handwriting according to experts or it's not his handwriting according to experts. I mean, that will tell a lot if Gloria Allred ever turns it all over. You know, but of course Hillary said it was all a vast right-wing conspiracy, and then taking money from countries that abuse women, millions, and kill gays and lesbians and persecute Christians and Jews. You know one thing that money did buy those countries? Her silence. The great champion of women, Hillary Clinton. All right, we'll have plenty more time for this later in the program today. What are you doing? Pastor Darrell Scott is here, my friend from Cleveland, the national director of the Diversity Council, right?
Yep, Diversity Coalition.
How are you?
Doing good, man. Listen, I had to stop by and holler at my homie while I was in town.
Well, first of all, I had the best time at your church.
We had a great time with you as well.
I asked you before I got there. I said, "Well, do you have anything where I can put a couple of notes down?" And what did you say to me?
Oh, we've got a platform now. We've got a podium.
It is the biggest podium I've ever seen in my life. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that way, you won't drop your books. You won't drop your Bible. It's great.
Is that why you do it?
I mean, you know what? Large podiums like that came into vogue in the black church.
Right.
And so, there is a black church. You have the white church. Well, the white churches have those little metal rostrums.
But
now
your church.
Well, we're a mixed congregation.
Yeah.
But, that was the Vogue furniture, and I liked it. I liked the big platform.
Yeah.
And, my wife and I used to preach side by side for years. We tag teamed, and we would stand up there together, so we needed room. She took up all the space, so I needed a bigger platform.
By the way, if you're anybody in this country today that supports this president, boy, you're not liked by a lot of people. Have you paid that price like I do?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm still getting it every day on a regular basis.
Do you really?
Yeah, but, I have sort of like the same Twitter disease that the president has. Sometimes, I don't know, I might have some sick psychological twisted psychosis that I thrive on some of that stuff, and I like to go back and forth and hit them back and make them mad and get them angry, but then my wife would come along and say, "Okay, Pastor, stop." And so I have
Is that what she says?
Yeah, I have to restrain myself sometimes.
I've gone through periods where I'm really active on Twitter, and I'm just fighting away, and then I've been through a quiet period now. I'll tell you why. I'm just too busy. I got too much work to do. I'm doing too much research. I'm trying to do my part, and I've got 4 hours on air a day. I can hit back anywhere I want. And how many followers you got now?
Not like you. I mean, I'm only up to like 40,000 or something like that.
Oh, let's start retweeting everything Pastor Scott does.
Yeah, help me get some Twitter followers.
No, that's
but
funny.
You know what? You have a loyal army out there of Hannity-ites.
Yes, I do.
They went in on the coffee maker and tore him a new one. And anybody mess with Sean, you got to mess with us. So, I mean, he's got a whole army out there. They rally the troops, too.
They do.
I get them. Come on now. They're going after Sean, so we got to get them. And so, hey, I jump right in.
You know something? There's one thing that the good book that you preach every Sunday. You preach how many days a week?
I do. My wife does Tuesday. I do Thursday and Sunday. Twice on Sunday and once on Thursday. So I'm twice a week. She's once.
But you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Yeah. One thing I just want in all of this, I just want to know the truth.
Well, I stated on Twitter, and I said, listen, if the judge did do this, it's very unfortunate, and if he didn't do it, it's very unfortunate because he's accused of doing it. Nowadays in this country, they begin with a verdict, and then they search for the evidence instead of taking the evidence and arriving at a verdict. So this country has become backwards, and it's because of the left.
We just retweeted 3 of your tweets, by the way.
Oh, great.
Linda did, yeah. Isn't that nice? All right, so maybe. By the way, if you're on Twitter, what's your handle?
What is it? At Pastor D. Scott, I think. Yeah, at Pastor D. Scott.
Hey, Linda, what is it? At Pastor D. Scott? Is that what it is? He doesn't even know his own.
It's at Pastor D. Scott.
At Pastor D. Scott. Okay, great. Now I know.
Getting to the truth or saying that you don't rush to judgment, although all the liberals defended the Clintons for 30 years, which is amazing. And you do that, and it's like people think, guilty. It's not political for me.
Let me say this, and it's something I thought about. In Black America, Roy Moore might get more leniency because blacks are accustomed to being accused falsely of sexual impropriety, sexual crimes, among other things. And so in the black community, the judgment is somewhat reserved on the street. When you hear these guys in the barbershops and on the streets and in the community, the judgment is somewhat reserved because a lot of people have been through the same experience, being falsely accused.
That is one of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, thou shalt not bear false witness.
Why do you think? Look, it's interesting because I think the 10 Commandments have been broken down, and I'm giving you my little bit of seminary background. You shall love God with all your mind, heart, body, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. And upon these laws rest all the laws of all the prophets. Something to that effect. Right. Okay. One of the top 10 is a big deal. We know the other 9 commandments are broken regularly. Mm-hmm. Is that one broken regularly?
Which one? Bear false witness? Yeah. Oh, all the time. I mean, basically it's saying don't lie.
Yeah, don't lie.
We used to have a saying in the church back in the day. We say liars will be friars.
They'll be what?
Will be friars, because in the book of Revelation it says all liars will be found in the lake of fire, have their place in the lake of fire.
All right, here's a question.
We would say liars would be friars.
The book of Revelation, I know, how many people did they say in total will be saved? 144,000. Is that literal?
No, it didn't say that.
Why are you laughing at me?
The Bible doesn't say only 144,000 will be saved. Those 144,000 were Jewish missionaries that would go forth during the tribulation and evangelize the planet Earth, coming forth from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. But it's an innumerable company.
But everybody, even the apostles thought the end of the world was coming, right?
I mean, you know what it is? We live like it might come at any minute, but we work like it's not coming for a long time. So you can't rest on your laurels and say, well, since Jesus is coming back and I believe it, I'm not going to do anything. So we work like he won't be back for a long time, but we live like he can come at any moment.
But there are certain signs that we're supposed to observe, and earthquakes in divers places, and the love of man will grow cold. Are we at that point?
We're at that point with those signs, but there's some political things that have to be done. And to be honest, to be totally honest, I've seen President Trump's presidency. It seems to me that because of his America First policy, America is not mentioned in the book of Revelations. So there are a lot of thoughts concerning that. Will America have been destroyed, or will America lessen its influence on the world stage? Because the events of the book of Revelation all take place over in the Middle East. So is America going to withdraw its presence or its influence from the Middle East? And and I can see that happening, but it depends on who's going to be the president.
But actually, I mean, this president in many ways, I think, has done more in the Middle East. He's strengthened our
ties with Israel rather than isolated us.
Well, he strengthened our ties with Israel, but more importantly, you see, as the Iranians seek hegemony in the region, you do see an alliance that has become unprecedented, and that's the Saudis, that's the Israelis, that's the Egyptians, that's the Emirates, that's the Jordanians, all against Iran, because if you put, the Iranian mullahs that chant death to America, death to Israel, and burn American flags and burn Israeli flags, that's kind of uniting everybody, because if you marry radical Islamists with a weapon of mass destruction, that could be Revelation-like, catastrophic.
In the book of Revelations, actually, Saudi Arabia is going to give refuge to Israel. So their relation is not going to be, they're going to have a stronger relationship than they do now.
I'll be honest, I've read the book of Revelation. I don't understand it.
I'll give you some material that'll help you understand.
I do not understand.
I've got some good reading material.
Like if I read the Bible, I usually, if you read about King David, or if you read the Psalms, or you read, the words written in red, I understand those words. Revelations, I don't understand.
It's not really hard to understand. There's a threefold division to it. I mean, we can get into it, and it will take a while, but it's not as hard to understand once you find the key to it.
You know what I'm going to ask you?
Okay.
You believe in speaking in tongues.
Yes, Kareem does, too. We got Kareem here in the studio.
Hey,
Kareem believes in speaking in tongues.
Right. You do believe. All right, so if I start speaking Russian, because the apostles got that gift, and they would speak to peoples in other lands, and they would speak in their language, which they had never studied. Isn't that what the Bible says?
In that instance on the day of Pentecost, but the Bible also speaks of a man speaking in an unknown tongue. And Paul said, though I speak with tongues of men or of angels. Then there's another scripture that says when a man speaks in tongues, he's speaking unto God mysteries. And
I can barely speak English.
There's an angelic language. But you know why? Because you're trying to intellectualize this.
Kareem, you want to weigh in?
And it's better felt than tell.
Because because that's the only thing I disagree with. But I know you have a passion for this, and I know you help people, which is what your mission is. Yeah. You want to help people, and you want people to live better lives. Yeah. And you want, why are you laughing, Kareem?
Come on, man.
Go ahead.
Well, this is like a barbershop conversation, right? And so at the end
I need a haircut, by the way.
It's a spiritual barbershop conversation.
So at the end of the barbershop conversation, nobody ever wins, okay? And it always ends with, you agree to disagree, okay? And I think we just need to leave it there.
This has been an ongoing debate in the body of Christ for years. Tongues or not tongues? That is the question.
I believe
it took me a while, though. My wife got them immediately. It took me a while. I was like you.
Listen, we believe in a simple thing, that God created the world, right? Mm-hmm. And he sent his only begotten son, and that he suffered, died, and was buried to reconcile mankind to his Father.
Right.
And whoever believes in him shall never perish. I believe that. Do we agree on that?
We agree on that. I had that conversation with someone about the president. It was actually on Christian television. I said, listen, all the basic tenets of the Christian faith, pre-existence, virgin birth, sinless life, vicarious death, burial, resurrection, ascension, second coming. President Trump believes in all of that. Now, his sanctification process, that's between him and God. His maturing and his developing in the spirit.
Pastor Scott, love you. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, man. I got to bounce. I got to catch a plane.
All right. God bless you. It's good to see you. Thank you for inviting me to your church. It was a great honor for me.
You'll be back on a Sunday morning to preach.
Love to. I'd love to do it. I really would. It was an honor to be there. Hey, if you want to protect your home, there is evil in this world. Deliver us from evil, Pastor. I loaded up here today. All right, they did pass this bill in the House yesterday. Larry Kudlow, Steve Moore are going to join us. Peter Schweitzer. The floodgates on Uranium One and the dossier are about to gush wide open. We'll explain and much more.
Poor people. And I've been here working my whole stinking career for people who don't have a chance. And I really resent anybody saying that I'm just doing this for the rich. Give me a break. I think you guys overplay that all the time, and it gets old. And frankly, you ought to quit it.
Mr. Chairman, the public
believes it. I'm not through. Okay. I get kind of sick and tired of it. True, it's a nice political play.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
it's not true.
With all due respect, I get sick and tired of the richest people
regular order, Mr. Chairman.
Getting richer and
regular order.
Regular middle. We do a tax
regular order.
Middle class.
Wait a minute.
Regular order.
And over again. How many times do we do this before we learn this?
Listen, I've honored you by allowing you to spout off here, and what you said was not right. That's all I'm saying. I come from the lower middle class originally. We didn't have anything. So don't spew that stuff on me. I get a little tired of that crap. And let me just say something. If we worked together, we could pull this country out of every mess it's in. And we could do a lot of the things that you're talking about, too. And I think I've got a reputation of having worked together with Democrats.
Let's start with Chip.
Not starting with Chip. I did it. I've done it for years. I've got more bills.
Start with Chip today.
I got more bills passed than everybody on this committee put together. And they've been passed for the benefit of people in this country. Now, all I can say is I like you personally very much, but I'm telling you, this bull crap that you guys throw out here really gets old after a while. To do it right at the end of this was just not right. And it takes a lot to get me worked up like this.
Call the roll.
I've got to say, this is nothing short of extraordinary. Let me just tell you, getting 218 members to agree on something as complicated as the most... well, we needed 218, but... Okay, let me rephrase it. Getting 227 members to agree on something as complicated... This country has not rewritten its tax code since 1986. The powers of the status quo in this town are so strong. Yet 227 men and women of this Congress broke through that today. That is powerful. Of course, I want to thank not just the members who made this possible today. I want to thank the president. I want to thank his administration. And I want to thank our partners in the Senate who are doing their work as well.
You will admit now, for the sake of this discussion, that some Americans under this Republican plan will be paying more in taxes, correct?
There will be people who make more than $1 million in high-tax states that will be paying more. And as the president has said, this is not a tax plan to cut taxes for rich people. This is a tax plan to make businesses competitive and give middle-income taxpayers.
When I hear that M word, I think it's code, and I'm used to hearing it from the left for many years. I think you are as well. I think you would admit that. But this is a Republican majority in the House and in the Senate and the White House. And you're admitting that for some Americans, they will pay more in taxes.
Well, but again,
is this what the American people have waited a generation for?
Again, just to be clear, what we're doing is getting rid of the state and local tax deduction, which is a loophole for high-tax states. That's the reason why New York, California, and others have taxes as high as they are, because the federal government is subsidizing those taxes. And for most Americans, the vast number of Americans that don't have high-tax states, it's not fair that they're subsidizing a few states. So, again, the people's taxes who are going to go up are the rich people in high-tax states. But, again, there's a lot of benefit to the New York economy of lowering the corporate rate to 20%. That's a huge boom for the financial services industry. They can hire more people. They can pay more people. They can create more jobs. They can be competitive. So there are offsets in this that will absolutely help the high-tax states as well.
I hope you're right about that.
All right, hour 2, Sean Hannity Show, toll-free. Our number is 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. I have known Orrin Hatch for all these years. I don't think I've ever heard him that animated ever, because it is an absolute lie that this bill that they're going to hopefully pass in the Senate, the Republican bill, has anything of any benefit to anybody that is, quote, rich. That is one of my biggest complaints about Republicans, that you have 20% of Americans that pay most of the taxes in this country. 50% pay no federal income taxes. None. Zero. So we have redistribution. Now, if you believe in supply-side conservative economics, Reaganomics, which I have always believed in and continue to believe in, I would argue that the Republicans have abandoned that. And while what they're doing on the corporate side is phenomenal. Middle-class tax cuts is phenomenal. Repatriation is phenomenal. When they passed, drilling in Anwar and energy independence, that's phenomenal for economic growth, the engine of economic growth that will get people off of food stamps, out of poverty, and back to work. What this election was really all about. I know, we spend an inordinate amount of time against the never-ending attacks against the president, but this is what's going to make the difference on top of the growth that we've already gotten because of the end of burdensome regulation that the president did on his own. Anyway, here to weigh in on all of this, Larry Kudlow, CNBC host, former Reagan administration economist, author of the new book. It's a must-read if you want to understand economics, Reaganomics, the supply-side conservative argument of how to create growth in the economy, the JFK and Reagan Revolution, a secret history of American prosperity. Also, Stephen Moore is with us, distinguished visiting fellow for Project for Economic Growth at the Heritage Foundation. Gentlemen, welcome back, both of you, to the program.
Hi, Sean.
Larry, when you were on last time, we both agreed this is great in terms of the corporate tax cut, the repatriation. the push towards energy independence, the end of burdensome regulations. But any notion that this is a tax cut for the wealthy is just patently false.
I agree. I would only add the, immediate expensing for new buildings and technology. But I thought your intro was great. You have the story right. The growth, we're going to get good growth from this, and we're going to get it from the business side. Steve Moore and I, among others, drafted this back in the campaign. Ironically, it's still holding up. My biggest disappointment is the top rate wasn't lowered. Trump just said he wanted to go to 35. That's where we were originally. But one quickie, Sean, your take on Orrin Hatch. Every single Republican should listen to Orrin Hatch fighting back against class warfare. Everybody should hear that. We've all known Orrin many, many years. He is a supply sider, and all I can say is good for him. Don't let the left mow him and push him back. And what you need for this country, you need growth, and that growth will benefit, Sean, everybody. Everybody will benefit from growth.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, the reason I support the bill has nothing to do with me individually, because I'm going to end up paying a lot more in this bill. What frustrates me is, and my argument, Steve Moore, welcome back, is that the Republicans they don't have the stomach for what Orrin was arguing yesterday. They don't have the stomach to say this is a tax cut for the rich and explain to people that if you cut taxes across the board, Reagan doubled the revenues to the government. Reagan helped create 21 million new jobs. We had, till that point, the longest period of peacetime economic growth. Everything that happened with JFK and Reagan that Larry writes about works. And I think as it relates to cutting top rates, Republicans don't have the stomach for the fight. Am I wrong?
Well, look, I think this is a pretty darn good bill the Republicans passed yesterday. I mean, I have some reservations, as you do and as Larry does, but my goodness, this was a pretty historic day for Congress to pass the biggest tax cut since Reagan. It's about time. Shame on the Democrats, by the way, Sean. Shame on not a single Democrat in the United States House of Representatives voted to cut taxes on American families and American businesses. I mean, I'm just disgusted by that, by the Democratic Party and how far they have moved to the left. I think there are a lot of good things in here. I agree with Larry that the heart and soul of the growth comes from reducing our business taxes, and it's very simple, Sean. If you look at those people, you were talking about in the top 5% of income, those are people, you know what they do for a living, Sean? They own, operate, and invest in small businesses. Now, as my old boss, Dick Armey, used to say, liberals love jobs, but they hate employers. You can't have jobs and good-paying jobs unless you've got healthy employers who are making money and reinvesting that money in the business. And so I think this will do a world of good for the economy. And I just want one other quick thing, Sean. I am so proud of the Republicans for putting in this bill. I hope it remains the getting rid of this individual mandate under Obamacare, because, by the way, that's a tax increase on that initiative in Obamacare is a tax on low income people, and Democrats don't want to get rid of that either.
Let me ask, we have a different version in the Senate, and then eventually they'll try and reconcile all of this, and then hopefully it ends up on the president's desk. Larry, talk about the differences you see in the bills and what you would like to see in the final product.
Well, actually, the House bill is more front-loaded, and I like that a lot. I think the Senate's making a mistake holding back the corporate tax cut to 20% to 2019. I think that's a mistake. And the House bill gets all that stuff started in the early years. So that's something. I think the pass-through small business subchapter S companies should get a bigger tax break. I'd like to see that. Ron Johnson is making the case, but I think they should get a bigger tax break, although it's been improved somewhat. I would have had much larger marginal rate cuts for individuals. I guess that's not going to happen. It's too bad. Real Reagan-style tax reform, Sean, is slashing the personal rate. I mean, slashing. And then you don't need the deduction, so you can take it away. What they're arguing about now, because there was no slashing of marginal rates, 3 percentage points at the bottom, the deductions are more painful. and they're going to have to work out the SALT deduction.
But, you see people like Darrell Issa. Listen, I can sympathize with Darrell Issa, voted against the bill because, it's not his fault that the people of California elected a governor that put the state income tax at 13.5%. And the same goes for New York and for New Jersey and for Illinois. And all these liberal states now have a little reckoning. And maybe they'll hold their local governors and legislators accountable for raising taxes as high as they do and as often as they do.
You're so right about that, Sean. I mean, if you compare, Texas and Florida with New York and California, I mean, in New York and California, the highest income tax rate is now about 13.5%. It's 0 in Texas and Florida. You've got states like New York and New Jersey, Sean, right now that spend almost twice as much per person on state and local government spending as, say, a state like Tennessee and New Hampshire. So why should people in Tennessee and New Hampshire be subsidizing 40% of the flabby government in New York and California, the pension costs, all of this stuff? So I like that feature of this bill. I think it's a long time. I mean, I wish Reagan had done this. He tried to do it in '86, and Republicans are finishing his agenda here of closing that loophole in the tax code that I think is just it's not fair for people who live in low tax states to have to pay for high tax states.
So well said. I mean, and in ways they're being punished. I stay right there. We'll continue. Steve Moore, Larry Kudlow, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of this extravaganza. Luke Rosiak, the investigative reporter from the Daily Caller, will join us next half hour as we have updates on Debbie Wasserman Schultz that you need to know. All right, as we continue, Larry Kudlow and Steve Moore are with us. We're talking about the House, and you got to give the House credit. The House has passed 300 bills that have not been even picked up by the Senate. The House passed their health care bill. I got to give them credit for that. I assume if the Senate doesn't get this done, it will impact everybody politically, both House and Senate. But I don't think it would be fair. I think it's up to the Senate to keep their promises. Larry Kudlow.
Sean and Steve, I think the senators will do it. I spoke at the Republican Senate breakfast 10 days ago. Their demeanor, their whole attitude is we are going to get this done. We are going to get this done. This is different than health care. Steve and I were talking earlier about this. There may not even be a conference. If the Senate writes a bill, they're not that far apart. The Senate writes a good bill, gets it through the floor. You don't need a conference. That'll take days. They can get it done before Christmas. One little glitch, Sean, this whole Alabama business, and God knows what's going to happen there. If Moore loses, you'll have a Democrat, right? That could hurt the vote. If Moore wins, you'll have a Republican, but he said he's opposed to the tax bill. So it's baffling to me. Be better to get this whole thing done before December 12th election down there.
What do you think, Steve Moore, politically?
Yeah, I think they're going to get it done, too. I think Larry's exactly right. And, as Larry just said, he and I worked with Donald Trump during the campaign to put the framework of this together. And, look, I think it's about 80% of what Donald Trump originally asked for. I would have liked 100%, but we got most of what we wanted out of this. And I just want to say one other thing, because it's so important, Sean. I mean, getting rid of the individual mandate on Obamacare, it will cause the unraveling of Obamacare because people don't want it. They keep saying all these people are going to lose their health insurance. These are 13 million people who don't want Obamacare, can't afford it, and if you don't have to stick a metaphorical gun at their head and force them to buy it, they don't want it. So I think that's a great thing. I think we're going to this is going to set the pace for getting rid of Obamacare and give us the biggest tax cut. That's a big deal.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you both, Steve Moore. Thank you, Larry Kudlow. We appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN is our number. You want to be a part of the program. A lot more coming up. Luke Rosiak, investigative reporter for the Daily Caller, is next. We have my favorite guest of all time. He's more fun and is going to make your holiday so fun that you don't want to miss. John McLemore coming up. Peter Schweitzer also at the top of the hour, straight ahead.
Do you have any regrets about anything you did as chairwoman?
On the contrary, I'm very proud of my tenure as chair of the Democratic National Committee. It was a tremendous honor to be asked by the President of the United States to watch his back, to help bring him across the finish line in 2012, to help re-elect the first African-American president, and to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. Anytime the president asks you to do anything, it's a tremendous honor, and we were very focused on making sure, and we successfully ran a primary that was by the book, that followed the rules. Under my understanding, the Capitol Police is not able to confiscate members' equipment when the member is not under investigation. It is their equipment, and it's supposed to be returned.
Well, I think there's extenuating circumstances in this case, and I think that, working through my counsel and the necessary personnel, if that in fact is the case, and with the permission of through the investigation, then we'll return the equipment. But until that's accomplished, I can't return the equipment.
I think you're violating the rules when you conduct your business that way, and should expect that there would be consequences.
Can you elaborate more on what the DHS's connection with the DNC was, or consultation with the DNC was after you became aware of the hacking and they became aware of the hacking, as to what was offered them, what they accepted? Was there any level of cooperation at all?
To my disappointment, not to my knowledge, sir. And this is a question I asked repeatedly when I first learned of it. What are we doing? Are we in there? Are we helping them discover the vulnerabilities? Because this was fresh off the OPM experience. And there was a point at which DHS cybersecurity experts did get into OPM and actually help them discover the bad actors and patch some of the exfiltrations, or at least minimize some of the damage. And so I was anxious to know whether or not our folks were in there. And the response I got was FBI had spoken to them. They don't want our help. They have CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity firm. And that was the answer I got after I asked the question a number of times over the progression of time.
Now, that was, I assume, totally different from the reaction you got from OPM.
The OPM effort, we were actually in there on site helping them find the bad actors.
Do you know who it was at the DNC who made that decision, or who was making the resistance?
No.
Do you know if the FBI continued to try to help, try to assist?
I've read in the New York Times about those efforts sometime earlier this year.
All right, News Roundup, Information Overload Hour, Sean Hannity Show. There's some strange happenings always with Democrats that are under investigation. Hillary, she just goes ahead and deletes 33,000 subpoenaed emails by Congress. Just get rid of them. Just delete them. The lawyer says that, they went through them and sorted them out, and they were about yoga and a wedding and a funeral and talking to Bill, and 33,000 of them. But nobody gets to see them because not only does she delete them, she acid washes the hard drives, and bleach bit is used. And then the devices that would also have that information, they're smashed into smithereens by hammers. And isn't it interesting, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she doesn't want the FBI looking at DNC computers for some reason. So they bring in their own company and tell the FBI, no, we don't want you to investigate it. Pretty odd. They don't want those hard drives looked at by anybody. And then, of course, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she has, this Imran Awan guy, this former and now indicted former IT aide to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This is the guy that was found to have been overbilling, worked for him and for he worked for her and other Democrats, accused also of fraud in Pakistan involving huge chunks of land. But the charges were dropped. This is pretty interesting because Awan's son, this is the guy I'm talking about, Imran Awan, had easy access to the corridors of power, according to a detailed September 3rd, 2009 article in the Pakistani newspaper that is entitled Influential Expatriate Shields Father from the Long Arm of the Law. This is getting pretty interesting. We also have a Rambo Deadfish Emmanuel aspect to this. Luke Rosiak has been the guy that has been in the forefront of this investigation. He works with the Daily Caller. Luke, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's bring everybody up to speed so that, because, with Uranium One, with the Fusion GPS dossier, with the email server scandal and the FBI, and it gets confusing. This is the DNC. Remember, Debbie Wasserman Schultz gets fired on the eve of the Democratic National Convention. Take it from there.
Sure. So right after the WikiLeaks publishes the DNC emails, the Capitol Police come to Wasserman Schultz and say, look, there's a problem with your IT guy on the House side, because, of course, she's a member of Congress as well. So for 10 years, she's had this guy, Imran Awan, doing all her computer stuff for the House of Representatives. And they say he's been doing data transfer violations, he's been funneling data off the network, and it's like terabytes of data. It's a really serious data breach. So they ban him from the network in February. But they don't bring criminal charges, which is one of the weirdest things. And a couple of months go by, and he gets the sense that prosecutors are closing in, and he tries to flee the country. Prosecutors arrest him at the airport, but they don't charge him with the data transfers. They charge him with mortgage fraud and other kinds of fraud where he's getting money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and wiring it to Pakistan. So the Democrats have said, that's just a financial crime. It doesn't have anything to do with the House network. But, let me be very clear. This entire investigation started because there is massive evidence that he was funneling House data off the network. But so he's been charged with this financial crimes, and they say no big deal. It's got nothing to do with politics. Well, what he was doing here was apparently using the proceeds of one fraud in America to pay off a previous fraud in Pakistan. And you can see the contemporaneous account from 2009 where Pakistani paper, the biggest paper in Pakistan, wrote this whole article about the family, how they got in all kinds of trouble for fraud, and the charges were dropped because they're saying he has all this kind of political influence. And he actually convinced them over in Pakistan that he was working for the White House. So this is a guy who is working for Congress, and he's using that position to do all kinds of crazy stuff over in Pakistan.
It's pretty unbelievable. All right, so let's talk about the father here for a minute. Well, let's just backtrack 1 second. Let's go to the FBI. They want to look at the DNC email server. No, you can't look at it. Does that seem like a normal course of action to you? If the FBI say, we got to see who hacked into your email server, let us do it. We're the best at this.
Well, no. I mean, if you're saying that this hack was this attack on democracy, it's the most dramatic thing that's ever happened, it's the worst thing in the world, then obviously you treat it very severely and you take swift action and you bring in the big guns and you bring in the cops. And they didn't do any of that. But even more bizarrely...
But would it be a leap to then conclude that they had something to hide on there?
It would not be a leap at all. And I think it's very difficult to square the actions of Wasserman Schultz when it happened again, when the Capitol Police came to her. Because regardless of who took the DNC emails, she knows how bad hacking is. She knows the fallout that can result from a disclosure. So why has she been protective of Imran Awan? And, this is a guy who took her laptop and left it in a phone booth, and she protected him after that. The whole thing does not correspond to people that take cybersecurity seriously.
Do we know where that computer is that was found by the police that Imran Awan put out there?
Yeah, the police have that, and they're going to be in court next week, and they're going to argue about, is this admissible? There's be some legal wrangling over, can they hide this evidence, and can they hide it behind, congressional privilege, attorney-client privilege, things like that.
Okay, so So is it once again a case where Debbie Wasserman Schultz is taking a lead role in that she wants that laptop back badly?
She hired a lawyer to block the review of that laptop at one point in time, which is a highly unusual step. And again, this is a guy who is not. They tried to say he was arrested for working while Muslim. That was a quote from his lawyer. But if there's one thing we know about this guy, he's been accused of fraud on 2 continents dating back years. He has 4 women accuse him of abuse. One of them said she was kept like a slave. His stepmom said he was kidnapping her, keeping her captive. There are so many allegations against this guy. You combine that with the fact that he was funneling data off the House network, and they flip out if you express any concerns with, hey, maybe we should look into that. Maybe we should be concerned about, was he using this data for nefarious purposes, when really any reasonable person would see that the prudent thing to do here would be to really have great concern about this.
Is it fair for me to say that, short of you and me putting you on the air, that the mainstream media is pretty much ignored all of this?
Yeah, and I think it's indefensible. I think if they looked at the facts, they could not ignore it. And Sean, you've been the only one who's been, diligent on this, and you've taken the time to go into the details. And anyone who reads the details and who looks at these documents will come to the same conclusion that this is a serious data breach on the House of Representatives. But they want to spin you with sound bites for people that aren't as engaged and that are just like glancing at the TV, and they just misrepresent. I mean, they say this is a guy who would do no wrong. He was just your everyday guy down the street.
And you're a racist if you raise question.
Right. And really, the circumstances of the fraud detailed in Pakistan are remarkable. I mean, he stole land allegedly from these 70-year-old farmers and then framed them and said that they were torturing him physically. And then he was stealing this land allegedly with a business partner. The business partner and Imran Awan's own mom were killed in a car crash. And right after his own mom dies, he double crosses the business partner. So this is someone who's got money on their mind right after his own mother is killed. What would that kind of person do potentially with data, political data that's obviously has great monetary value? This is someone who would frame peasants for things they didn't even do. What would he do if he saw emails containing compromising things in members of Congress's email addresses that could be used for extortion? This is a guy with really, really strong evidence to think that this is a guy who has crazy character flaws, who's, potentially doing all kinds of no good things, who's highly motivated to get money.
All right, Luke Rosiak, Daily Caller, thank you for being with us.
You described the scene where he was biting on your lip, and then when it was all over, he was leaving. I said, you better put some ice on that.
Yeah, and casually put on his sunglasses and walked out the door. And I've told my friend who came back and found me that I was sitting there crying and so upset at the time, and I felt like that the next person would be somebody coming through the door to get rid of the body. That's just about how I had absolutely couldn't believe what had happened to me.
You begged him to stop?
Yes.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
But just to be clear, so is it your view that President Clinton should have stepped down at that time, given the allegations?
Yes, I think that is the appropriate response. But I think things have changed today, and I think under those circumstances there should be a very different reaction. And I think in light of this conversation, we should have a very different conversation about President Trump and a very different conversation about allegations against him than what has been had to date and what's currently being had.
It's amazing now when it doesn't matter. After 30 years of running defense for the Clintons and their lies, that only now, when it won't impact the 2016 election, is the left now coming out and saying, oh, I believe Juanita. Oh, Kristen Gillibrand, he should have gone in 98. I guess that's the signal now. Oh, okay, we don't need the Clintons anymore. Well, we don't need their fundraising ability anymore. Do you realize, and they sat and watched the systemic, literal abuse of every one of those accusers, but now Democrats, and Hillary even said during the campaign, and I was like, what? Last year, these women have a right to be believed. I'm like, what about all the women and your husband? Oh, those matters have been settled. No, they haven't been settled, nor has it been settled the smear campaign that the entire Clinton organization set up. Oh, I'm sorry, bimbo eruption team, war room that, people like Carville and Begala and let's see, Stephanopoulos. Oh, what does he do now? He works at GMA. Good Morning America. That he was a part of. You got to see. You can actually see the movie War Room and take a look at it and see Stephanopoulos in one particular scene on a phone call, just excoriating a reporter who's just trying to do their job at the time. And they absolutely, there he is for everyone to see. And it happened to Jennifer Flowers. Turns out, yeah, she did have an affair with Bill Clinton, and she was called a liar, too. And Hillary Clinton attacked her directly. And Hillary went on 60 Minutes to defend and push back against that one. And then the Kathleen Willey incident, that wasn't consensual. That was groping and grabbing and fondling and touching against her will. And she was called all sorts of names, and terrible things happened to her. And then Juanita Broderick, she came out. And, of course, NBC, now Juanita rightly is saying, well, wait a minute. Why didn't NBC run this before the election? Why did they wait? Fascinating. 30 years of defense. Well, they're not running anymore. I guess we could admit we were wrong on them, and because they shared our political philosophy, it was okay. We'll continue.
Coming up next, our final news roundup and information overload hour.
As you know, President Trump has tried to flip the script and now says the Justice Department should be investigating you. Mm-hmm. And this week we learned that Attorney General Sessions is considering a special counsel to probe the Uranium One deal and alleged conflicts with the Clinton Foundation. What's your reaction to this?
You know, I regret deeply that this appears to be the politicization of the Justice Department and our justice system. This Uranium One story has been debunked countless times by members of the press, by independent experts. It is nothing but a false charge that the Trump administration is trying to drum up in order to avoid attention being directed at them. I mean, even Trey Gowdy, somebody who's hardly a fan of mine, said that there doesn't seem to be the basis for a special counsel. And of course, there isn't. But if I try to take myself out of it, which, is kind of hard because it's personally offensive that they would do this, but taking myself out of it, this is such an abuse of power, and it goes right at the rule of law.
Uranium One case, I know you've been asked about it. Can you say, forget about whether it's under investigation, in the past, did the FBI or DOJ inform either President Obama, Secretary Clinton, or any cabinet secretary that it had uncovered evidence that Rosatom's main U.S. executive, Vadim Mikirin, was engaged in bribery, kickbacks, and money laundering before the Obama administration approved the Uranium One sale in 2010?
Is it that the Mikirin matter, the matter that was prosecuted in Maryland?
2014, but there was an informant in 2009, 2010. The FBI had evidence of bribery, kickbacks, and money laundering. Was that information conveyed to any of the relative people on the CFIUS board? The Clinton, other cabinet secretaries, or was it given to the president?
The way I understand that matter is that the case in which Mr. Mikirin was convicted was not connected to the CFIUS problem that occurred 2 to 3 years before. When the case came to the United States Attorney's Office, Mr. Rosenstein's office in Maryland, CFIUS had already been approved by 2 years or more.
There was an FBI informant starting in 2009.
I have not talked with him, but the Department of Justice, I understand, has approved him providing information to the Congress. And I understand it'll be set up in a few days, and you'll be able to hear from him direct.
I think you should too, because from everything I've been proffered, he has evidence of illegal conduct 2009 and 2010 before this deal was agreed to involving Uranium One. It was all connected.
All right, that was Hillary Clinton. Uranium One is false, and this is an abuse of power. Fascinating. You're talking about a dual justice system coming out of the Clintons. We'll get to that. That was Ron DeSantis asking Jeff Sessions about Uranium One. Sessions saying the informant will testify to Congress in a few days. Reuters released the name of the FBI informant. This is now all building into what is going to be a massive, massive case. I am telling you, TikTok, everybody, it's going to get really big. The person that got it all started is Peter Schweizer, author of the #1 New York Times best-selling book, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary So Rich. And he's also the president of the Government Accountability Institute. Welcome back, Peter. How are you?
Great, Sean. Great to be back on with you. Thanks for having me.
I want to give you an opportunity just directly to respond to Hillary and what she was saying. This has all been bad. Oh, this is old news. Oh, this is about the justice system and abuse of the justice system. What is your answer to that?
Well, look, here's what's happened. You have Hillary Clinton and her allies and some people in the media who are taking the Uranium One story, and they are cropping out of the picture certain key events. So what they will do is they will look at, say, 2010, the Uranium One deal, a certain time period, and say, look, if you look at just this time period, we don't find any evidence. And it's like taking a picture and cropping certain things out to distort what's going on. What we know, Sean, very, very clearly is you have the head of the Kazakh uranium ministry saying in detail in 2010 in a video deposition that Hillary Clinton extorted Kazakh officials to get these uranium assets that launched Uranium One. They extorted Kazakh officials and said she was not going to cooperate with them until those uranium assets were given to Frank Giustra, who became a big Clinton Foundation donor. And this is important, by the way, Sean, because Kazakhstan at the time was receiving tens of millions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money for non-proliferation efforts. And who was on the subcommittee with oversight of that? That was then Senator Hillary Clinton. So there's a lot to this story that rings true. And Hillary Clinton has never been asked about this. She has never dealt with this issue at all. And initially, the Clintons, Bill Clinton, claimed that he did not know this official, Zakashev, and lied to the New York Times about it. The New York Times then produced a photograph of this gentleman, Zakashev, meeting with Bill Clinton in Chappaqua, in the Clinton home, and then Bill Clinton had to change his story. So that in and of itself is interesting, but that's the beginning of this story that then moves to 2010, the flow of money that was never disclosed, this approval process, and what a lot of critics of the Uranium One story want to do is just isolate part of the story and ignore the rest, and you simply can't do that. And, my position has been from the beginning, we need to investigate it. The only way you can find out what exactly, precisely happened is by investigating this. And it's ridiculous to me, the standard that people are setting up in the Clinton camp is because we cannot prove the actual crime being committed, you don't investigate. Well, in all these other cases of political corruption, you start an investigation when there is suspicious evidence, and there's more in this case than there has been in a number of other public corruption cases going back.
I want to go to the FBI informant that had infiltrated this network set up inside of this country for over 4 years. Again, an FBI informant. And I am told there are tens and tens and tens of thousands of documents and notes and evidence that this individual has that he will now be presenting before Congress, along with him having his own experience, having infiltrated this network. And this is the network where bribery and extortion and racketeering and money laundering and bribery, all that had happened. And it's now we have questions about who knew what, when, and where in terms of what Putin was doing and the desire of Vladimir Putin to get into the uranium market in America. Now, all of this has to be predicated on this fact that America does not have enough uranium and we import uranium, and then why we would ever allow any outside entity to have any control, why we would ever approve it for national security purposes. It's just one of the dumbest decisions I've ever heard. Never made sense on the surface of it. But they had all this information about Putin's desire to get a foothold in the uranium market in 2009. Now the evidence is going to show this was all true and that people knew, like Robert Mueller and Rosenstein and people like Eric Holder. And then it will become, what did Hillary know? And when did she know it? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, you're right, Sean. I mean, look, in 2010, the Moscow Times, which is an English-language publication based in Russia, actually ran an article. People can go find it online, where the money that was used to purchase Uranium One was released by Vladimir Putin himself at a public ceremony. There's an article about it. So, the argument that somehow, this uranium sale, Uranium One is no big deal. Why is the president of Russia announcing the fact that they are purchasing Uranium One? That's the first thing that people have to get their hands around. So this was done at the highest level. But the second factor that is dismissed by critics is Uranium One not only has uranium assets in the United States, they have ones in Kazakhstan, those ones I mentioned earlier that Hillary and Bill Clinton helped the company get. Those are some of the richest uranium deposits in the world. They have deposits in Australia. They have them in Africa. And all of those had to, for this deal to be done, it had to get the approval of CFIUS, the federal government, and the Obama administration. So we are talking about vast uranium deposits, not just those in the United States, that were signed off by the Obama administration. And look, let's remember, when this deal was being considered in 2010, you had senior-ranking Republicans on the House Armed Services Committee, on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, on the House Financial Services Committee, on the Homeland Committee. All of them were expressing their concerns about this deal and sent letters to CFIUS saying, we think that this deal is bad for American national security. So the argument that nobody was objecting to this and there's nothing to see here is simply not there when you look at the historic record. And the problem is a lot of people commenting on Uranium One aren't even looking at that historical record, Sean. That's part of the problem.
I mean, you even have now, the Never Trump crowd. It seems like they almost want to do everything they can do to defend Hillary Clinton on this, which is amazing. But I don't think they're going to be able to do it because the facts are clear. I have noticed people say, well, the timing of the payments and the money to the Clinton Foundation don't coincide with a quid pro quo. And I saw you had a very strong answer to that.
Well, that's right, Sean. They don't line up if you cut out key events. Look, 2005, the Clintons helped Frank Giustra get these uranium deposits in Kazakhstan. And you have the testimony of the Kazakh uranium minister. You had a big article in the New York Times about this. After those assets are procured in 2005, Frank Giustra sends $30 million, and that's the beginning of donations. That's key. So that explains the reason you get these early donations. Then in 2010, when it's up for federal review, you still have 8 members of the board or investors in Uranium One who are contributing to the Clinton Foundation. And those donations were not disclosed. The actual chairman of the company, Ian Telfer, who's Canadian, donated $2.35 million that were never disclosed by the Clintons. When the Russians took over the company, he remained as chairman of the company. That has never been responded to. So, look, what they want to do is exclude certain events, ignore certain facts. You can't do that. And my point is simply, let's investigate to find out precisely what happened and see how much evidence there is in the flow of money and the decision-making process that was made.
I want to go back to the 9 people that approved this, and I want to go back to the fact that the FBI knew of Putin's intentions. How could that not grab the attention of the FBI? How could that not have gotten to the Attorney General, Eric Holder, at the time?
Well, clearly that we know that there's a paper trail, Sean, of communication. State Department cables, for example, that came out in WikiLeaks, and I talk about them in the book. There are State Department cables going to Hillary Clinton from the U.S. Embassy in Kazakhstan reporting on the fact that Russia is trying to desperately work to corner the world uranium market. Those cables exist. Those cables were sent, so those are not in dispute. And there was other evidence as well, statements. I mean, there was an article in Pravda about after the Uranium One deal went through describing how the Russian nuclear industry was now dominating the world. So this has been well known in specialist circles, well known in the energy field, and for them to argue that, no, we didn't either know about this or it's not a big deal, again, just runs contrary to the historical record itself.
All right, as we continue, stay with us. Peter Schweitzer is the author of the best-selling book, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary Rich. And as we continue, Peter Schweitzer is with us, and he, of course, the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary Clinton Rich. How rich did they get?
Well, it's hard to say because the reporting has been incomplete. We know that they made millions of dollars in speaking fees from people that were directly or indirectly connected to the Uranium One deal. But we also know that those that were involved in Uranium One from 2005 up to 2010 donated a combined $145 million to the Clinton Foundation, which is an astronomical sum. them. And honestly, Sean, I've said this before, I cannot imagine a situation where a, say, Secretary of Defense that was not named Clinton had a spouse who was running a private foundation who took $145 million from, say, defense contractors who wanted to influence the Secretary of Defense, that would not even be investigated, that there would be a serious discussion to say, no, there's nothing to see here, there's no conflict of interest. So it's a lot of money. The timing is there. Barack Obama had insisted, as did John Kerry, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when Hillary was appointed, explicitly said you need to disclose all donations. The Clintons promised to do that, and in fact they didn't. They happened to hide and not disclose the donations that came from the chairman of Uranium One and some of the other shareholders. And to my mind, that alone merits investigation. How did that happen, and why did they not disclose them?
All right, really good, informative session. I can tell you that starting next week, if I'm the Clintons, if I'm involved in Uranium One, there is going to be an avalanche that is coming. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of this extravaganza. I will take a quick break. We'll have some fun when we get back. My buddy John McLemore is here, and I just love this guy. Thanksgiving is coming. When you're talking about the best food you've ever had in your life, absolutely. Quick break, right back. We'll continue. At 25 till the top of the hour, 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. This is like my favorite time of year. Once a year, sometimes twice, I get to see my good friend John McLemore. He's the CEO of Masterbuilt Fryer. And with Thanksgiving coming up next, why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I always laugh when I come.
Why did you say you like Rick and Bubba better than me? What's up with that?
You know what? That's funny you bring that up because when I was with them, they said that they are now number one. You're now right below them. I was like, I don't know, guys. Sean's pretty cool guy.
Did they really say that?
They did say that.
They are lying.
Yeah, they actually said
they're supposed to be good Christians. They're lying like that?
That's right. You're supposed to get me a meeting with President Trump, and they said, well, if Sean can't deliver, they will deliver.
Well, I'll let them do their thing then.
Yeah,
I'll put the responsibility on their shoulders. We'll see if that happens. How you been? It's good to see you.
Man, I've been great. We've been traveling around a lot. We were just in California. We're on our media tour. Obviously, we
You're on Steve Harvey's show, right?
Yeah, we were on Steve Harvey's show. We were out there doing a little bit with Mario and
Mario Lopez.
Yes.
Yeah.
Slater.
Okay. Yeah.
So every time this year rolls around, you asked me earlier, do you love this time of the year? I do for two reasons, John. We love traveling, and we love sharing great stories and all of our recipes and how Masterbuilt can be a part of people's Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about the fryer in just a moment about what we cook for you. But I love it for that reason. And then I love Thanksgiving Day because we just
now
take
you're
a break.
home.
We unplug. We are home. We've got about 40 of our family.
What's your favorite drink?
Ooh, water.
Is that true? I don't believe you. Oh, boy.
Yeah, Sean, I don't drink, so I'd probably have to say, just a good old cup of coffee.
On Thanksgiving?
On Thanksgiving morning.
All right, here's the thing. Now, I know people have to understand here.
Yeah.
This is just a fact. There is the old traditional way of cooking a turkey.
That's right.
And then we've got our butterball fryer, the Masterbuilt fryer.
Yes.
Okay. The difference is so dramatic.
Amazing.
It is honestly, it is the difference between dry, I need 4,000 pounds of gravy.
Yes.
And I don't use gravy
at all.
My turkey being fried
That's
at
right.
all.
So there's a lot of things to consider here. And Thanksgiving is that number one meal of the year that everybody stresses over. So we're going to help them out with the Butterball electric fryer. We're not only going to help them fry their turkey, but we're going to allow them to free up their oven. Imagine that. When you think about getting the turkey done at the same time with all of the side dishes, it's almost impossible. So people fret over it. So we're able to fry turkey in about an hour, and you can have the oven for all your side dishes and your desserts.
You didn't see my tweet last year when I pulled it out. I did it all myself.
All yourself.
Did you see it? You never saw my tweet last year? Do you see it?
Yeah. Okay, wait. Yeah, I saw it.
What happened? You go to Rick and Bubba's studio. They taught you how to lie when you were there. What's up with that? You were such a good person before today.
I was.
No, it is so simple.
Juicy. And here's what
this is the thing. And when you pull it out, you're like,
it's
wow.
so easy. So what I want everybody to do is go to masterbuilt.com. I've got a short video showing folks how to take a completely thawed turkey, give it a warm water bath while you're heating up your Butterball fryer. Takes about 40 minutes. Take it out of the warm water bath, pat it dry, inject it with your favorite injectable marinade. Today we used the Buttery Creole. Inject it.
I think that's my favorite.
That is your favorite?
Yeah.
Season the outside with Cajun spices. Get the turkey fryer or the electric fryer gets up to 375 degrees. It automatically maintains the temperature. Lower it into it very slowly, 4 minutes per pound. We can do a 15-pound turkey in 1 hour.
I did it last year myself. And, is that my tweet?
Yep.
Oh, you got
okay. I've officially seen the tweet now.
Okay, no, you're missing the one with me pulling it up and showing everybody. I tweeted that too.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to tweet it out. If you can get that to Linda from last year, I'm going to show you what I did. I was so proud of myself. Number one,
that's awesome.
And I watched my mother years ago agonize over the turkey, and she's up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and she's there working the night before. It's simple.
Simple. So, Sean, that's the big question for everybody.
And it tastes 1,000 times better.
It tastes better.
So much
simple.
better.
It's not intimidating. So, for about 13 years now, almost 14 years now, Masterbuilt has developed technology that allows people to safely fry their turkey. And then when Thanksgiving is over, it's got a drain valve so that you can pour the oil back up and save that oil to fry another turkey for Christmas. In between that, for football, fry your buffalo wings.
You know what I learned from you today?
What's that?
Okay, if you buy biscuits.
Yes.
Okay, you just roll them into little balls, right? You take just regular biscuits you buy at any grocery store.
The most inexpensive canned biscuits you can find.
Right. Okay, there you go. Then you put it in for about a minute.
Yep.
Take it out. And then you sprinkle cinnamon sugar. Done.
So you have an appetizer, hot donut. Put it in a little brown paper bag and shake it up.
Right.
It's exactly what they serve at the restaurant, so that you can have fun doing an appetizer prior to serving up the turkey. Then do your turkey, and as you said, it's the juiciest, best way. Butterball is the number one brand in turkeys. Masterbuilt is the number one brand in our smokers and electric fryers. So the two companies have come together to give us an amazing product.
You know, I know years ago, I'll never forget, I was in this, I lived in Alabama and I lived in Georgia. And I had never known about people literally in their backyards building a fire, heating up the oil, dropping the turkey in, and nearly blowing up the home.
Yes, it was the YouTube videos that you saw out there.
Right.
So what's amazing about the Butterball electric fryer,
this is safe.
Never, ever have we had an oil fire with this product.
What did they do wrong before you invented this thing?
The reason is it's just like your stove, Sean. If you cook bacon or fry something on your stove and you leave it unattended, the oil will get to a flash point because it overheats. With the technology of the Butterball electric fryer, it's guaranteed to never overheat the oil because it has the device in it, just like the restaurants.
Shuts it down.
That shuts it down. And again, you not only have the safe way, the easy way, but imagine freeing up your oven so that you can do all the side dishes. So think about Thanksgiving if you're going to do lunch. Instead of having to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do it in your oven, you can actually turn the fryer on at 10 o'clock, lower the turkey in at 10:45, take it out at 11:45, let it rest for 15 minutes, and you're having lunch.
It's that easy.
That easy.
It's you talked too about you got me and gave me my first smoker.
Yes.
Masterbuilt smoker. Now, this is amazing. I have become the expert of smoking because my brother-in-law,
Yeah, he stole one of your smokers, right?
Yeah, he did. He stole my smoker. He tried to steal the next one. But he has become a master. He's at your level.
Yeah.
But the thing is it works automatically.
Yes.
And you can use Bluetooth and control the settings.
Yes.
And turn it on from another location.
It's similar technology with the electric fryer. It automatically maintains that temperature, just like our electric smokers. We also have new technology with smokers out there because we are, again, number one in that category. We have a new product called a thermotemp propane smoker. It maintains your temperature. So if you want propane, you've got it. If you want electric, you've got it. And those also.
I like the electric one.
The electric one that's still our number one product right now. So
all right. So I want to look. Everyone's going to make a turkey on Thanksgiving. If you've never used this, I promise it'll be the best turkey in your life. The most convenient way to cook a turkey. You'll be finding other great uses for your butterball. It's electric.
That's right.
All right. And I use it for all sorts of things. You do chicken wings, through the list.
You can do chicken wings. You can do southern fried chicken. What's amazing, too, is instead of putting in oil, you put in water. And it turns into a seafood boiler. We do low country seafood boils. You can also hang the basket with the patents that we've got on our basket. Close the lid and it turns it into a steamer.
All right. Now, how do people get this for themselves? Because
the best
your
thing
website.
They'll have their website. You can go to masterbuilt.com, but if you want to go to a retailer, you can go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Sam's Club, Walmart, Academy Sports, Bass Pro, Cabela's, and really visit us at masterbuilt.com to see if there's any other retailer in your area. Visit us on our Facebook page and send us your story. We want to see your pictures. We want to spend time with you folks, everybody out there that's listening. If Sean can do it, trust me.
All right, I am now going to go. I'm going to go to Twitter, and we're going to retweet. Thank you very much. If Sean can do it.
Yes.
If Rick and Bubba can do it, then anybody can do it.
If Rick and Bubba can do it, if Sean can do it. And Sean, before we get off the air here, I got to give a shout-out to my team at Masterbuilt.
By the way, we got a whole team here.
We got a whole team. Yeah, I think we got in trouble bringing the entire company up here. But we really do have I have a blessed job. Everybody at Team Masterbuilt, from our customer service to our engineers to everybody in every single department, we have an amazing company that loves sharing their stories out there. So I want to say thank you to everybody at Masterbuilt and the McLemore family for giving me the greatest life a man could possibly have.
Well, you're making our lives better, and it is fun.
Yeah.
I love using your product. I love
awesome.
The Butterball. I love frying my turkey. I love your smoker. I love everything you do, and the food tastes amazing.
Yes.
It's going to make your Thanksgiving, Christmas happier.
Yeah, and Herman Cain is still waiting on his smoker.
Yeah, I know. I
call you out again.
Oh, I'm sending
Herman,
it this year.
If he don't give you a smoker, call me. I'll take care of you.
That's painful. All right. John McLemore, God bless you, man.
Man, you're awesome.
This is the best advice we can ever give anybody for Thanksgiving, and you're right. We have a lot to be thankful for.
Yes,
Amen
do,
to that.
Sean. Thank you.
All right, we got to take a break for today, and that's it. We're out for the week, but I'm in next week. We're finished for this week. Let not your heart be troubled. We'll be back. Yes, I'm live on Monday, Tuesday. We'll be in next week. And it's, of course, Thanksgiving week. We all need a break and so much to be thankful for. All right, back here on Monday. Have a great weekend. See you then.